And good morning. How's everybody doing today? Good morning, Nicole. Thanks for coming. Glad to have you. I appreciate that. Cheers to you. I don't know who else we have on the broadcast, but if you're here on the broadcast and feel like typing in the chat bar to say good morning, you can. And whoever you are, good morning. Thanks for coming. So let's see. It is week 8 of their class. Oh, we got Clara Gillo in here. Okay, hello, Clara. Good to see you. Fantastic. I wonder if we have either of the Barrises here, John or Rosemarie, today. If either of you are here, good morning to you as well. So we are in week 8, which means we are on chapter 8. And that's important for 2 reasons. Number one, it means we are now talking about socio-emotional development in early childhood. And more importantly, what it means is we have an exam coming up this week. So we have our second exam this weekend, and the exam will be available on Friday at 9 a.m. and it will be due Sunday night at 11:59 p.m. I haven't created it yet. I will do that actually right after this class, but there will be a broadcasted review session Friday morning at 10 a.m. And I hope to have the review sheet up by this evening. I know I'm running a little bit behind on getting some stuff up. I usually try to have the entire semester done, exams and everything before the semester goes, but I'm creating all new content and I'm kind of a little slow on it. But I will have the stuff up and ready for the exam on Friday. Okay, anybody have any questions about the exam? Same format as last time. I'm going to try to work out the problems with the time extensions for those of people who had difficulty with time extensions on the lockdown browser. I'm going to figure that out. But any questions? Clara, Nicole? Okay, fantastic. Let's go ahead and get started. Oh, let me see, get up here. All right, so socio-emotional development in early childhood. Remember, the period is from 2 or 3 to 5 years of age. So from the time the child is walking and talking to when they actually go to school, to organized education. Now, we talked about physical and cognitive development last week. We talked about how kids' bodies and minds change during this period. So now we're going to talk about the emotional changes that occur in early childhood. Now, if you remember, I introduced you to Erik Erikson the first week in class. We then talked about the first stage in personality development. And so we're going to come back and revisit Erik Erikson. Good morning, Ronique. Thanks for coming today. I am glad to see you. I appreciate it. Thanks. We were just talking about the exam that's coming up this weekend. Now, if you remember, when I first introduced Erik Erikson, I suggested to you that he had a theory of personality development. How do people evolve their personalities to become happy, contented, older people? Exactly how does that process happen? Now, I told you that he was a cohort of Freud's and Alfred Adler and Karen Horney. And what this gentleman argued was that our personality develops through 8 crises or tasks that we have to resolve. 8 important questions that have to be asked as we grow up through our life. As I suggested to you, developmental psych students, this is very important for some reason to your nursing program, and they're going to want you to understand the different psychological tasks that people go through as they go through different ages in their life. Okay. Now, so what we're going to say is that each crisis, if the child resolves it well, they are going to develop a virtue or a personality trait, a strong personality quality. So, for example, I suggested to you the first year of a child's life, they're really trying to develop a sense of trust in the world, right? That the world is going to look out for them. Now they do have to learn to wait just a little bit, so they can't get too trusting. But the child has to develop a sense that the world is a place where things are going to work out okay. If they do, that gives them a basic sense of hope, a sense of hope. Otherwise, the child becomes withdrawn, and you're going to see children who have reactive attachment disorder. They disengage from the world because they weren't taken care of during the first year of life. Good morning, Shamay. Ronique, Shamay is here. Now, what's going to happen when the child starts toddling, and I think this was the week that I had you watch recorded videos, your child has to develop a sense of autonomy and ability to do things on their own without somebody helping them. And at the same time, they need to learn a little bit of shame and doubt. They need to learn the word no. And what we suggest is if you give your child the right balance of letting them do stuff and reeling them in, they will develop a personality quality we call the willpower, the ability to do something, right? Now, what I want you to know from this is he argues that during the preschool years, okay, your child's world now going to expand beyond mom to this larger family and maybe some play friends, and your child's now going through the crisis of, should I take a chance? Should I take my turn? And what you're going to find is that children who are 3 and 5 years of age, they need a little encouragement sometimes to take their turn. They're afraid to get out there and give it a try. All right. And so what you're trying to do is you're trying to build a sense of initiative in your child. Come on, see the other kids riding the seesaw. You can ride the seesaw too. You know what? Your kid may actually want to help you put away dishes or clean up the house. They're showing a sense of initiative. They're taking a turn. And what you want is your child to have the confidence to take a turn, right? Now, some children, on the other hand, never feel and develop this sense of guilt about taking a turn. They're too embarrassed to jump out there and be the one who's getting the turn. They develop this sense of guilt. And you don't want your child to be the kind of person that is afraid to try something new, to take a turn, to throw their lot into the to throw their hat into the ring, so to speak. Now, here's the deal. On the other hand, you want your kid to try to take a chance, but you want your kid also to be good at letting other kids have a chance as well. So you don't want your kid to be all initiative. You don't want them to be ruthless. Okay, so some children, you don't want them to be the kind of kid that doesn't give anybody else a chance. But on the other hand, you want them to be the kind of kid that will take a chance too. And so during 3 to 5 years of age, you're encouraging your kid to try new things, to do that weird, crazy, interesting things, to join the play group. And so you're trying to give them a sense of purpose, the confidence to create and pursue a goal. Now, let's think about these personality traits. You first wanted your kid to develop a sense of hope, an idea that people in the world were looking out for them. You then wanted your child to develop a sense of will, the ability to be separate from and explore on my own. Now we want them to have a sense of purpose, the willingness to pick a target, a decision, to decide to do something, a sense of purpose. Do you see how these personality qualities, he called them virtues and he called it crises. It's really not a crisis and a virtue. It's learning an important lesson and developing a personality quality. And so from 3 to 5 years, you want to have your child get the courage to take a chance while still giving other children and other people a chance too. And so this is sort of what Erik Erikson thought was the most important thing about this age. And this is not a bad way to think about it. Now, let's talk about how children, one of the parts of developing a personality is understanding who you are as a human being. Ryan, I'm sure thanks for coming. I'm sure you have a sense of self. You know who you are, what you like, what kind of person you are. Ronique, I can definitely tell because you talk a lot. I can definitely tell you know who you are and what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are and what you like and everything about you. And this self knowledge is a part of maturing. And it begins to emerge during this period. So we begin to really start to develop a sense of self. You ask an 18-month-old child about themselves, they're not really going to be able to tell you much about who they are. And at 2 and 3, still not. But as children become 3 and 4, they're actually going to be able to answer the question about themselves. Who are you? What are you? Tell me about yourself. They're going to begin to develop this sort of conscious self-awareness. Now, if you'll remember what I showed you in cognitive and infancy development, there's a period at which children can look in the mirror and they don't even recognize themselves. You definitely can't develop a sense of self if you don't even know who you are in the mirror. But that begins around the age of 2. And then starting from 2 to 3, you're going to see the emergence of this sense of self, the child beginning to know to some degree who I am. But it's still going to be very egocentric. It's not going to be that logical. So children are going to start to symbolize themselves, but they're not going to think about themselves in context. And they're probably not going to be able to talk about themselves in any logical sort of sense. And so down here it talks about the progress of self-descriptions during this age. All right. So in this age, you're going to have very, very concrete self-descriptions. You're going to talk about yourself in terms of things that you can see because you're still coming out of the sensory motor period. I have brown hair. I have a bicycle, right? And you're going to describe other people that way. I like whatever. So you're going to describe yourself in terms of the things that you can see. And what you're going to find, and I'm not saying that this isn't true, but you are not going to focus on anything that's self-reflective or negative. You're going to be unrealistically positive about yourself. Now, it turns out that all of us have these positive illusions that we use when we get older. I talked about that in Psych 150, and I might mention it later this semester. So we all are a little bit deluded about our ability. These are called healthy positive illusions. But when you ask the 2-year-old, I can run fast. That's all they're going to tell you. I can run fast. Fast against who? How fast? And they're going to say, I can fish good. I'm a good jumper. You know what I mean? It's going to be unusually concrete and unusually positive during this age. And this is sort of going to appear at 3 or 4. Now, your child may even use some emotional descriptions, but they're not going to be things like depressed, satisfied, and stuff like that. They're going to talk about being scared or happy or laughing. They're going to talk about these concrete emotional feelings that they have. All right. Now, you see a little dot right here. What they do say is that having a secure attachment style, being comfortable with your parents, remember, developing that sense of hope gives you the sense of autonomy to break away. And so you have to have a secure attachment before you have the confidence to explore. That's sort of what the attachment process is. What you're going to find is that insecurely attached children, their ability to begin developing this self-concept isn't going to go quite as smoothly at 3 and 4 and 5 as your securely attached children. And these may lead to identity problems later in life. So the secure attachment style is very important in helping to begin to develop this thing called a concept. Now, remember, your children are pre-operational, pre-logical. So they're not going to think very smartly and very logically about their self-description. So if they're trying to do something hard, that's as good enough as doing it well. So they confuse ability with effort. So if I run real fast, that just means that I'm trying really hard when I'm running. Are you actually running fast? Doesn't matter at this age. The kid's just trying real hard, and so they perceive that is running fast. And again, as I suggested, they're going to be very egocentric. They are not going to compare themselves against other people. They're just going to say, I ran faster than I did last month, so I am super duper fast now. So children's thinking is going to be illogical and egocentric at this age. So their self-descriptions are going to be illogical, egocentric, and also very concrete, what I can see about myself. So that's what you're going to see as the emerging self concept. The first thing that begins to occur in 3, 4, and 5 after objective self-awareness is going to be this concrete, unrealistic, and positive and isolated sense of self. Now, one sense of your self-concept is developing a sense of gender, and your book's going to talk a little bit about being that. Now, your sense of gender begins to develop in the second year of life and grows in potency throughout your childhood. We're all going to begin to develop a sense of who we are as being a male or female. And really, it's going to be present pretty soon after we realize that we are an object. Now, I've actually got videos I can show you demonstrating that this gender socialization and these gender roles that we are expected to require, expected to adhere to, are begin to be socialized upon us early in our first year of life. It starts with the gender reveal party. Blue is for blue, smoke is for boy, pink smoke is for girl. We decorate their home, their bedrooms in pink or blue before they get home. We may get pink clothes for girls and blue clothes for boys, but never pink clothes for boys. We just don't do this. The first initial toys that we get and the interpretations we're going to make of children's behavior are going to be sexually socialized. And so, in a sense, as soon as we begin to think of ourselves as males or females, we're going to begin to think as objects. We're going to begin to think of ourselves in terms of being male or female. This is our gender identity. And we're going to develop gender roles, and we're going to begin to gender type. That is, we're going to begin to act like either being boys or girls. Now, I'm not even going to talk about people whose gender doesn't fit within what we would call the normative cisgender dichotomy. That's a more complex discussion, probably for another class. But just to say that people do have beliefs that are based in part on what society says they are and what they feel inside themselves. And this becomes known as your gender identity. Now, your book's going to talk about how we occur these sense of gender identity. So what I'm suggesting to you is that we engage in, we have beliefs that are reinforced by our parents, right? So social cognitive theory. We develop a sense of gender because our parents reinforce our early attempts to become consistent with our gender roles. So when I choose to truck as a boy, my dad or mom gives me positive feedback. And after a while, I begin to associate boy things with being good. So we develop this socialized theory of what we should be as a boy or a girl. Now, you can think of gender schema theory, and these beliefs develop into schemas about what boys and girls mean. So you can think of sort of this as a psychological thing, as being based on the reinforcements that we receive early in life, which allows us to develop these schemas or sets of beliefs about what objects, what gender means, right? And then we behave in these roles that fit in with what society expects. And you'll notice I've got sociology, reinforcement, and cognitive psychology. So different areas. So your social psychologists are going to focus on the roles that we have to play. Your social cognitive psychologists are going to do experiments with infants and show how parents slightly reinforce this behavior over that behavior. And then your cognitive psychologists are going to ask older adults to come up with associations that they have for being male and female and show that there are different conceptual groupings for each of these genders, male and female. And these represent psychological and social sort of theories about why we develop a sense of gender identity. So everybody knows that we all have gender identity, sense of being males and females, and that we acquire a set of roles and a set of that we then engage in. The question is, why do we develop these things? And like I said, it depends on who you talk to. Now, I'm going to briefly point out Freud's psychoanalytic theory. The reason I haven't talked about it yet is because I believe it's the least believable of one. But he actually argued that we begin to identify with our same-sex parents. So he argues that I, the boy, would acquire my masculine qualities by identifying with my dad. Now, he had this bizarro theory that I had a sexual attraction to my mom. I think my dad knows it and is going to kill me. So I try to identify with my dad and look just like him so my dad doesn't hurt me. That's a little bit crazy, but in a sense, Freud's nut of the truth was that little boys try to identify with the parent that they assume to be similar to them, and little girls try to identify and be like the parent that they feel similar to sexually and gender-wise as well. So we all have a sense of identity. That identity all comes with roles, okay, and types that we learn, and it may come from us being punished or rewarded for engaging in gender consistent roles and behaviors. It probably causes us to develop schemas for what male and females are. And it may have to even do with the fact that we try to identify with our same-sex parents. Okay? The only thing I can tell you is that gender does begin to emerge as one of the earliest parts of the identity. All right, now let's talk a little bit about parenting your toddler. Okay, here's the deal. As soon as your child starts to walk and talk, you're going to have to start bringing a little bit of control into your life. So the first year of your child's life should be nothing but love, nothing but conditional love, unconditional love and care. Okay, you're trying to make your child feel comfortable during their first 12 to 15 months of their life as they go from completely helpless to at least able to walk around and move their arms and legs. Once your child begins walking and moving around, you need to add a second thing to this love or responsiveness that you have. So you have to be responsive to your child for the first year of your life. That's called love. And you don't want to be an unresponsive parent. You want to be a responsive parent. But once your child starts walking, you need to add another dimension to your parenting. And this is where most parents today make their mistakes, okay? And I'm not trying to be one of those old school mean dads, but one of the things that you have to do is you have to start setting limits and making requirements for your children. You have to ask them to do things, to be helpful. You have to ask them to follow rules. One of the most important lessons that you have to learn at an early age is what no means. No means no. If you're being told you can't do it, you need to learn the self-control not to do it. It is very important that your adults bring in some degree of control in their parenting style. Most people think it's their job to be their children's best friend. That is only half of the story. Yes, you must be responsive to their needs, but you then must require something of them, right? Children who don't learn how to meet demands grow up to be adults that can't meet demands. And I'm not trying to say you need to be mean, but expectations must be set and followed. When you say no, your child must not do what you tell them not to do. When you ask your child to do something, clean up your room, pick up that toy, eat your vegetables, your child needs to do that. And you're not making demands because you want to be mean to your child. You're making demands because these are behaviors that they need to learn. So, a good parent is going to be the kind of parent that is responsive to their child's needs. If your child really has a serious concern, a fear, an anxiety, a problem, you need to be the kind of parent that is responsive to that. All right. Some parents don't care what their kids are feeling. You don't want to be that kind of parent. You want to be responsive. But at the same time, you have to set requirements and make demands upon your child, at least to follow the rules, but more importantly, to achieve things and do things. If you are the kind of parent that does that, that is responsive to your child, but still makes demands and requires things of them, you are what's known as an authoritative parent. Okay, these parents encourage children to be independent, but still places limits and controls on their actions. And there's a lot of verbal give and take. Tell me how you feel, and I'll tell you what the rule is. This is what's known as authoritative parenting. Children who grow up with parents who tend to practice this parenting style tend to have higher social competence. They tend to engage in more pro-social behavior, and they tend to be more successful adults. Now, there are some parents that that are very responsive to their children's needs, but these parents just can't seem to put any requirements on their child, because sometimes when you require things, makes your child a little stressed out. It makes them a little unhappy to hear the word no. And you don't want your child to cry because they hear the word no. And so these parents become the kind of parents that are very responsive but undemanding. These kinds of parents sometimes we'll call indulgent parenting. And so these parents are highly involved with their children, but very often place few demands or controls on them. I don't want to see my kid unhappy, they will say. I remember I had a friend who said that. I can't stand to see my child unhappy. I'm not going to let them be unhappy. And what she was a very indulgent parenting. Her 2-year-old would tell her that he was having candy for breakfast, and she would say, "What can I do? He wants candy." And my head would just go, whoosh. And he grew into a very spoiled child. Now, children whose parent don't give them any control, show social incompetence. They can't control their impulses around other people, which makes them not fun to be around with the other child. They just can't control their impulses, so the other kids will find them annoying and try to avoid them. These children don't respect others, and it may make them domineering and egocentric. And here's the deal. One of the most important things you have to be able to do as an adult is you have to be able to work in groups. And if people don't like you, don't want to work with you, if you don't have self-control, it makes being an adult more difficult. So these are the parents that are very responsive to their children, but the authoritative parents are going to also instill a little bit of control. Now, we can go on the other side, and there are some parents that really don't care about helping their kids out. They're not responsive. Maybe they have job problems. Maybe they have their own relation problems. Maybe they have drug or alcohol problems. Or you know what? Maybe they're just self-absorbed people that find it easy to say, you know what? I just let my kid be. So some parents aren't very responsive to their what's on their children's mind. Now, some parents, I know a lot of parents, I grew up in the deep South, and so a lot of parents I know were what we would call authoritarian parents. They were very demanding rules. This is what kids do. This is what boys do. You have honor. You do this, you do this, you do this. And they didn't want to hear that their kid was afraid or cried or sad or didn't want to do it or didn't think it was fair. These are the parents, the drill sergeant parents, the authoritarian parents, my way or the highway. These parents will exhort their child to follow directions and respect their work and effort, but they don't really care what the child is feeling. And these can be what we would call authoritarian parents. And you know what? Authoritarian parents who don't give the child a chance to express and have their own opinion also raise incompetent children. These children also get aggressive and can be the kind of children that take out their anger on other classmates at school in the form of bullying. And these are going to be the kids that act out as well. And then you get some of, and so these are sort of the drill sergeant parents. Now, I would have to say the parents that probably, I think, parenting style that is the weakest are the parenting style where the child is really left to their own devices with nobody that cares about them and nobody that tries to build them or help them develop. The neglectful parent. And this is the parent, the rock star parent, the drug addict parent, the parent that just doesn't even have time for the child, the parent that's fully involved in their own romance and doesn't seem to care about the parent. The parent is uninvolved in the child's life. Now, these children are also going to develop social incompetence because they have no chance to practice the give and take of relationships. They're going to have the lack of self-control, and they're also going to be the children that act out. So these are 4 parenting styles identified by a lady named Diana Baumrin, and she said that you can think of these 4 parenting styles as being combinations of 2 important dimensions that go into being a good parent. Being responsive to your child and also instituting control in their life. Now, here's the deal. Not everybody falls into one of these categories. In fact, we probably all bounce back and forth between these, with one of them being our most common parenting style. So let's say when I'm being a good parent, I'm an authoritative parenting. And I might be an authoritative parent. But you know what? Sometimes when I'm not being the optimal parent, what kind of parent can I be? I'm more of an authoritarian. I will sometimes get onto my boys and tell them I don't care what they're feeling. These are the rules and the requirements. So I tend more towards, if I'm not being a great parent, I'm probably more authoritarian. My wife, on the other hand, when she's not being a great authoritative parent, my wife probably tends towards being a little bit indulgent. Here's my question for you. When you're not being a great parent, which style do you tend to fall to? Are you more indulgent? Are you more authoritarian? Or do sometimes you just sort of lose track of your children with the neglectful parenting style? If you're not always a perfect parent, here's the deal. You're probably growing up, your parents had one or more of these roles with you. I would say my parents were probably more indulgent with me, and I did have some behavioral problems as a teenager. You know what? Sometimes I can be a tad egocentric and domineering. So I would say, you know, my parents, they were authoritative sometimes, but they were probably more indulgent than authoritarian with me when they weren't being perfect. How were your parents growing up? And if anybody wants to type in the chat bar and give me your parents' parenting style, I'd really be interested in hearing. Okay. Now, here's the deal. We typically talk about these parenting styles as if the authoritative parenting is the best and the authoritarian is really, really bad. But you know what? It kind of depends upon your culture. Cultural research, cross-cultural research has shown that not all cultures have the same opinion regarding parenting styles, specifically when it comes to the authoritarian parenting styles. So when you look at the outcomes in your typical American sample, what you're probably going to see is that your outcomes, the red outcomes that I gave you here, right here, are associated with your typical American culture, what your typical American kids, how they're going to respond to these parenting styles. But what you're going to find is that in Asian and Hispanic cultures, what we might think of as authoritarian parenting styles are actually perceived as being positive by parents and children alike. So whereas your American kid might say mom or dad is being domineering, Your child from the Asian culture is going to say, my parents are actually caring for me and showing concern by training me. Okay, so authoritarian, Ronique says his parents were authoritarian and authoritative with a little bit of indulgent. Right, right. I'll bet. Yeah, you probably, if you were like me, growing up in sort of a rural southern, and you're from way farther south, but some of those dads could be a little bit tough back in the day, couldn't they? Clara Gillo has authoritative parents. That's fantastic. Good to hear. Very good to hear. But what they're going to say is that in some Asian cultures, what do they call that? The tiger mom, who is really hardcore and very authoritarian on her mom. What they say is that she's not being authoritarian. She's being caring, and she's showing caring and concern for her child by training them to have high academic achievement. Sometimes we think of Hispanic cultures, maybe the dad as being authoritarian, but what they're doing is teaching the child how to respect their elders and show loyalty to the family. Two qualities which are going to come back positively on them as they get older within the family, and that this actually helps the child's identity development. So where the authoritarian parent might not cause the best outcomes with the American child, what they're going to suggest is that you might see high academic achievement with the authoritarian parenting in the Asian sample, or you're going to see a better self-concept and sense of identity to the child that grows up in the authoritarian Hispanic household, right? Now, parenting styles does not capture the reciprocal socialization involved in parent-child relationships. Some children may have behavioral styles that cause parents to engage in behavioral patterns. So maybe I had behavioral control problems which caused my dad to become more authoritarian. So there's a reciprocal relationship between these parenting styles. So it's not just that we can say that parenting style goes downhill. There's some reciprocation between the child. The child may invite a parenting style based on their personality style. Now, this is a very broad model, and they don't really talk about specific qualities within that model that are good and bad. So we just say authoritarian is bad, but if you look at these different cultures over here, you'll see that not in all situations. So what that means is that there are qualities and aspects of what we might call the authoritarian parenting style that are actually very good. And if we could unpack these models and look at the individual qualities within them, we might really learn more about parenting style than just coming up with this quadrant of 4 broad parenting styles, right? Now, and a lot of this research is based on research models involving maternal child interactions. And what they say is that we really need to think about maybe parenting styles within the context of the larger family, not just one parent or the other parent. Ronique, yeah, that's why I said a little bit of both. Exactly, Ronique. It's such a broad model that you could say, well, my dad was authoritarian in this situation. He was a bit indulgent in this situation, and he was authoritarian and authoritative in these situations. Right. It's a bit broad. It's a very broad brush to paint with, but it's one of the things that I think it brings in that I try to really emphasize to my students is this idea that we all do a great job of loving our children, and that's the most important fundamental part of being responsive to your child. But then what you have to do is it's so important that you be the first person that makes your child cry by disappointing them. I'm not talking about abusing them or terrorizing them, but you're the first person that's going to say no, that's going to put limits on them. And these limits are uncomfortable, and your child's not going to like them. But you have to do it, and you have to do it starting at 2 or 3. A lot of parents say, well, I'll start later when my child can understand what I'm talking about. At 5 and 6, it's too late to start instituting the control. It's a gradual process, and you start with the little things, pick up your toys, or no playtime is over. You have to start with those atomic things. When you get to know you can't take your car out and stay out past curfew and don't drink alcohol. Those are big no's. You have to start with the atomic no's, the little bitty baby no's at the age of 3 and 4. But don't go crazy with the no's and become the kind of parent that doesn't listen to your child. So that's why I think the blend is important to know those two dimensions of emotional control. Thank you for bringing that up, Ronique. You have to, it's a very broad brush of a model, okay? Now, growing self-awareness is linked to expanding and expressing a range of emotions. The weird thing is we don't even say people are built with a personality. Instead, you're built with a temperament. Your personality requires that you be self-aware. So you can't be embarrassed or shy or guilty. You can't have any of those emotions until you are self-aware. So we say that infants are not born with personality. They're born with temperaments. And those temperaments evolve as the child develops the intellectual ability to express a full range of personality traits. Same thing with emotions. Your child's going to begin to express different emotions and more complex emotions after they become self-aware. So what you're going to see is that the emotional functioning before 2 is going to be different than the emotional functioning from 2 to 5. Your child's going to finally begin to develop what we call self-conscious emotions. So pride, guilt, embarrassment, these begin to appear in the second half of the second year. Until you know you are an object, you can't feel proud of what you've done. Until you know you are an object, you can't be embarrassed about what you've done. So the first thing you have to do is you have to develop self-awareness, and then we're going to start to see these self-aware emotions begin to emerge. Clara, where are you from? Clara says it's a cultural norm to be strict as parents where I come from. Where do you come from? I come from the deep South, and historically we've have strict parenting down there. But what I found is a lot of Southern parents are really strict on one hand and really indulgent on the other hand. It's kind of a weird dynamic. They'll beat you for all these things, but then they give you too much. Yeah, we both would like to know, Ronique. Ronique and I would both like to know. So what you're going to see is that children, as they begin to develop these self-emotions, they need to start being aware of these emotions and learning how to control these emotions. From Kenya. Very good. Yeah, so you will definitely see these different strict emotions, strict upbringing in these different families. Thanks for sharing. So self-conscious emotions, what you're going to see is that children around 2 to 4, they're going to start to understand what causes the emotion, why I'm sad. Rather than just being sad, I'm going to start to understand why I'm sad, what's making me sad. And I'm going to start understanding these different emotions, self-conscious versus non-self-conscious emotions. All right. Now, your children are going to be egocentric, so their emotional functioning, although they're going to start to understand the causes of emotions and see links, they're still not going to think about them logically. Okay. Now, what children are going to start to learn at 5 or 6 is that other children can have different emotions, or that the same emotion can exist towards 2 different objects. So your child's going to become, remember, like they're going to start losing this egocentricism as they move into the 4, 5, and 6-year-old range. They're going to start to decenter their emotions and understand that other kids can feel different emotions about the same object. And they're actually going to notice that sometimes you can have the same emotion about 2 different objects. And your children are going to begin to show the ability to reflect on their emotions. And now is the time when you need to start teaching them how to manage their emotions. You don't want to scream at them for having their emotions. You don't want to tell them not to have emotions. What you want to do is to show them how to identify their emotions and manage them. One of the things that the Head Start program does do, I'm not sure if we've talked about Head Start yet or back, it was designed to, in fact, I think we did talk about it last week, stimulating children's mind during these critical periods to increase improve their intellectual functioning. One of the things that they include in the Head Start program is helping the children develop emotional awareness. You need to help your child understand, oh, you're just sad right now, but you'll get over this. You kind of have to help them label their emotions. Now, I'm not talking about being a weak liberal that just validates all of your children's emotions, but you have to help children learn what emotions are what. This is me being sad. This is me being angry. One of the things that you will see in adults, in a lot of adult males, where they've been taught to suppress emotions and that boys don't have emotions, is a lot of times men won't understand what emotion they're feeling. And they may be sad or embarrassed, but it comes out in anger because that's the only emotion they've ever been allowed to experience. And what you're going to find is that there are going to be some guys who will grow up who are so emotionally stunted that they're going to interpret every one of their emotions as being anger. And that's going to be their typical, prototypical way of dealing with the world is through anger. So it's important that during this age, you help children understand the emotions that they're feeling and then help them, encourage them to get over and manage these emotions. So remember, emotions, I talked about this in Psych 150. Your emotion is controlled by two parts. Your amygdala, which is deep in your brain center where your fight or flight or sense is, and that causes you to either be happy or absolutely angry. But then your secondary emotions controlled by your frontal lobe, which is under your conscious control. And that's where you learn to control the functioning of the amygdala. That happened and it should make me mad, but I've learned that it's not appropriate to be angry in this situation. It's not appropriate to yell. So you learn to control your emotions. So emotions are a function of two parts of your brain, your amygdala, which may not be under your control, and your frontal lobe, which is under your control. So one of the things that you have to do during this period is stimulate your child's frontal lobe by helping them identify and manage their emotions. Does that make sense? Okay, and here's the deal. Regulating emotions plays a key role in children's ability to manage the demands of conflicts that they face in interacting with others. Play dates, going to kindergarten, you have to learn how to identify and manage your children's emotions. And what I want you to do, what I've been describing about for the last few minutes, is being an emotion coaching kind of parent. Don't dismiss your child's emotions. Instead, help them regulate their emotions. Okay? And if you help your child learn how to identify and manage their emotions, they're going to be able to do that around their peers, and they're going to have more friends and a better time in school and more success as adults. What does it mean to be an emotional dismissing parent? This is the kind of parent that says to their little boy, you better not cry or I'll give you something to cry about, or stop crying right now. Okay? So telling your child not to have an emotion is not the thing to do. And I know that sometimes your child shouldn't be crying in a certain situation, but instead of saying, don't cry, that's saying stop the emotion, help your child identify the emotion, and let them know that it's not appropriate at this given time. So monitor your child's emotions, help them label these emotions, and then tell your child this is not the appropriate time for this emotion, and help them understand why they need to control their emotions. I'm not saying being a liberal and a wimpy parent and letting your child have all of their emotions, but I'm not saying being a drill sergeant and tell your child not to have emotions. Label those emotions and show your kid and help them control those emotions. So we're not going to go to the next thing unless I know you're sad, and that's very disappointing. But if you want to do the next thing, you have to stop crying. And so you tell your child, and so we're going to do this tomorrow. Don't cry. We're going to do this again. You don't need to cry. And so what you have to do is help your child develop the perspective, the understanding, the self-control to label their emotions and then control their emotions. That's where true emotional maturity comes from. A lot of people keep their emotions in and don't admit their emotions. That's not emotional control. That's called stifling your emotions. I'm not going to cry. I'm not ever going to be sad. I'm not ever going to show any emotion until I explode and lose it. That's not true emotional control. That's called stifling your emotions. Instead, what the successful adult does is they learn to experience emotions and understand how to control those emotions. That's what we want to do. Okay. Now, one of the things we want to do when we talk about morality, I'm not talking about any sort of specific morality. I'm talking specifically about being able to show empathy and pro-social behavior, how to understand other people's perspective and how to work with other people. The sad, but exactly, big boys don't cry. What you have to say, I know you're sad, I understand that, but you can do better. You can get over it. You can deal with this emotion, right? So I have a child right now that won't cry, so he screams and yells. And somewhere along the line, I didn't do as good a job in this emotional coaching as I could have. Now, when we talk about morality, I'm not talking about your religious morality. You can have whatever religion you want. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to proselytize you for God or Allah or Jehovah or Voodoo or anybody. Instead, I'm talking about these qualities that are important for humans as a pack animal. Your ability to demonstrate empathy and your ability to demonstrate pro-social behavior and feeling good about yourself. Okay, and so we want to try. I'm going to say that anger, outrage, shame, and guilt, these are not good emotions, and these are not the kinds of emotions that you want your child to have. And so what we need to do is find ways to help our child develop and accentuate these traits that we think are good and how to minimize or avoid these traits that we think are not pro-social and ruin your child's ability to function as a productive member of society. All right, now I've run out of time. I am so sorry. Anger is not a bad thing, or shame. Well, I would think anger can be self-destructive. I think I might disagree with you on that, Ronique. Maybe we should get together. And I'm not talking about shame. I think shame is, but self-control is not. How about that, Ronique? I would differentiate shame from self-control. I think self-control is a good thing. I think the emotion of feeling bad about who you are is a bad thing. You're right. Maybe I need to be more less simplistic in my description. I feel challenged, rightfully so, by you. Good point. And anger. How about non-acceptance? Maybe anger. Anger. It seems like I've always heard that you will not be punished for your anger. You will be punished by your anger. I sometimes feel like anger hurts me more than it hurts the people that I'm at. I don't have time, but below, please read these qualities that you can use to help contribute to the development of positive emotional qualities rather than negative emotional qualities. I am so sorry. It is 10:53. As usual, I have run over my time. I hope everybody's had a good lecture today. Thank you for all of you that stayed. We've had a great audience, 7 people out of 20, 1/3 of my class coming to the talk. I really, really appreciate that. You are such a great audience and a great group of students. I can't even begin to tell you how much I appreciate you. Assignment number 10 is not quite done. I'll have that done and ready to go this afternoon. And I hope to have the exam review sheet ready to go by tomorrow morning at the latest. If nobody has any questions, I'm going to go ahead and end this broadcast. I'll answer any questions in the chat bar before I end the broadcast. If you have any questions or problems, go ahead and send me a text or an email. Otherwise, have a great day, and I look forward to seeing you Thursday in class. Take care. Have a great day.